the battles at Saratoga, the turning point. You guys are doing this part at home, so you can fill out the picture, listen to the story, and have some knowledge about the battle at Saratoga, as well as, you know, thinking about it a little bit and understanding why it's a turning point. And then in class, when you come back in, I am going to be giving you a quick quiz to make sure that you did this, so you can get credit for that and knowing all this stuff. And also, we'll be going into some of these things in a little bit more detail, answering some more questions on it. So the first thing I need you guys to do is to fill in at the top of the paper here your full name and your class number. Even though I just realized I didn't put class number spot down here, you can put your class number down in there. Okay? Second thing, what do you already know? Turning point. The Battle of Saratoga was considered a turning point of the American Revolution, and I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to talk about turning points a lot. Turning points are a very important concept in life and all kinds of stuff, not just history. Okay, so knowing what a turning point is fairly important. Okay, now probably the easiest 7th grade-ified definition of a turning point that has worked for everybody else in the past is this, and I need you to write this down for turning point. Okay, it is the moment when the loser in something starts to win, or the moment when the winner in something starts to lose. All right, so the moment, that very short thing that changes everything, that's the turning point. Okay, so pause the movie right now and write that down. Now, please make sure that you have this written down. Pause the movie to make sure that you have it written down before you go on, because I have a sneaky suspicion, hint, 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 that one of the big fat questions that I'm going to be asking you tomorrow on the quiz when you walk in the door is, what is a turning point? All right, and this is your answer, the moment when the loser starts to win or the winner starts to lose. So pause it, make sure you got it written down, and you know it and understand that. Now, what I need you guys to do, and I can't write this in for you, I need you to write an example of a turning point from your life. And it doesn't have to be, super personal or something like that, because you might be sharing your example from your life. A food preference: I didn't like pizza with pepperoni, and then I went to a friend's house and her mother made me eat the pizza with pepperoni. It turned out to be good. Whatever. Okay. So some example of a turning point from your life. Okay. So pause the movie, write that down, and then when you're done. And please make sure, again, it's you're willing to share that with people, so think on it first. And then once you're done with that, then turn the movie back on again. All right? Okay, now, remember to write your personal turning point down here. I can't write that for you. It's your personal turning point. Okay? Not a lot of room, so do the best you can with the room you got. All right, now, once we get that done, you know what a turning point is, you've applied it to your life, so you know how that feels to be a part of a turning point. We're going to get to the next step here, and that is the Etch-a-Sketch part. Let me just explain this before you actually do this, because you're going to do this as we go through the reading and stuff that you're going to be doing in a second. Now, the Etch-a-Sketch lesson is this. I need you to listen carefully to the story that I'm about to read to you about the battles at Saratoga, okay, that the teacher is reading to you. I can read my own writing very well. As the story is being read to you, create drawings, or create a drawing, down here in the box, of the images that the story conjures or creates in your mind. Remember, there is no right or wrong drawing. However, please do try to stay within the main idea of the story. Okay? Create your drawings below and be prepared to explain how they relate to the battle with the class. All right, so a couple things. First off, as I'm reading you the story, I'm going to cut back and forth to some pictures of the battle itself and the geography and a map and stuff. So I am going to be giving you some images, to start from. so that when you're doing your drawing, you can kind of, you have a place to start. You got some ingredients that you can cook up in your brain and then make your drawing. Okay? Now, like it says here too, the drawing itself, there is no right or wrong drawing. Okay? For some reason, if you want to draw, puppy dogs and kitty cats smelling beautiful flowers in a meadow, and that's the Battle of Saratoga to you, that's fine. Here's the thing, though. You are going to have to explain how your kitty cats and puppy dogs and flowers relate to the Battle of Saratoga with the class. So there's that. Okay. Now your drawing again is your drawing. You can be as concrete and I have little stick figures with bayonets and they're going to shoot at the other stick figures with bayonets, or you can be abstract. Okay. The big giant whale represents the British and the little fish represents the Americans, or whatever. It's completely and totally up to you. All right, so be creative. I love the really abstract, creative, wild ones. I'm not going to be judging, and no one's going to be judging anybody on their artistic ability. It has nothing to do with it. Please, whatever possible, use symbols. Little stick figures look like little stick figures, but if you put an American flag over them, we know that that's the American Army. And if you put a British flag over them, we know that's the British Army. Little things like that you can throw the symbolism into that would be also very useful. Okay? Now I'm going to read the story, and as I read the story, I'm going to stop and show you some pictures, and then I'll continue on with the story, and then show you some pictures, and so on like that. Once you get done, feel free to go back and look at the pictures all by themselves. You can, kind of use the cursor bar or the slider bar at the bottom to run past the story part. You can use the slider bar to only read the story part, okay, and only do that, and because you want to make sure you understand what's going on for the quiz that we have in class coming up. Okay, so in a second here, I'm going to start reading to you the Battle at Saratoga. Okay, no drawing yet. Wait till the end. Okay, you got to know what's going on before you do your drawing. All right. I will be alternating between the reading and this PowerPoint slideshow throughout the rest of this lesson. The PowerPoint slideshow is basically just to show you some visuals, some pictures, and to show you some symbols that you might use in your drawing on the front page. Now, I would also like you to remember, don't start your drawing until you've listened and read the story through at least once. So go through the whole thing once, listen to it, read it once at least, and then start working on your drawing. And then when you're working on your drawing, if you need to go back and refresh your memory on anything, that's why we're doing it like this, so you can go back and use the slider bar at the bottom to do whatever it is you need to do to catch up on stuff. Here's some symbols that are here on this very front page of the slideshow. This is a painting of the surrender of the British General Burgoyne there, the surrender to the American General Gates, who is over here. And the person in the middle, interestingly enough, looks like General George Washington, but George Washington was not at the battle at Saratoga. He was in the process of losing several battles around the city of Philadelphia, and then losing the city of Philadelphia itself. All right, for your drawings, this is the symbol of the British. This is the British flag. They also call it the Union Jack, but that's not something I really expect you to remember. This is the American colonial flag there. You can see the red, white, and blue. Red and white stripes with a blue field here. Big difference from the British flag, right? Kind of. But again, maybe not so much there either. This last flag here is the flag of the royal French family, the Bourbons, who were the royal family in France. France at this point in time still had a a monarch, a king who was the only powerful person. It was like a king, like you think of a king, like he makes the rules kind of a king. Not like the king in England who made some rules, but he had to also listen to what the parliament had to say. The king in France really was the king. He was the one and only. Okay, so you get the different styles right here. These are called fleur-de-lis, which I think I mentioned before, but I'll mention it again. So that's the flag. Now, again, please pay attention to the symbolism when I switch back and forth. You know, when I switch to the slideshow, the symbols, the pictures, the drawings. That's what we're here for. Okay, I'm going to go back to the reading now. Now we're going to start the reading. Remember, I would like you to circle any vocabulary that you're having trouble with and underline anything in the reading that you think is extra important. Okay? Not everything should be underlined, and some things should be underlined. All right, so let's start the reading. The battles at Saratoga, 1777. 1777 was not a good year for the Americans and their revolution. The British had badly beaten General Washington at several battles and forced him to give up New York City. While Washington had won smaller victories at Trenton and Princeton in New Jersey, the British later won battles at Brandywine and Germantown, both in Pennsylvania, took the city of Philadelphia, and forced the American Army and Congress to flee into the countryside. So underline some stuff that's important, circle any words that you didn't understand. Quickly go to the slideshow, which I'm not going to make big. Maybe I will. Okay, make it big. Here we go. Did that already. Okay, here's some pictures of those two different battles. The first one down here at Long Island, again, this is Long Island, not the Long Island if you go to Long Island right now. This is actually the East River right here. These are all apartments and condominiums and big factories and stuff. Now back then, Long Island was more rural and more farm oriented than, say, even Spencerport. Okay, and you can see what's left of the American Army. They're running, they're fleeing away from the British. You can see the British here in the background. The British had badly beaten the American Army on Long Island, and basically what you're seeing here is a vast majority of the American Army running away and fleeing for their lives and literally jumping into the East River to swim across the river to the island of Manhattan, where General George Washington had his headquarters, and the rest of the army was over there. So this was a humiliating defeat on Long Island, which was followed up by an equally humiliating defeat at Brooklyn Heights in Manhattan. And eventually the Americans and George Washington had to literally flee for their lives out of New York City entirely, which really upset George Washington tremendously. For the rest of the war, all he wanted to do was to get back into New York City, and he never did. When he does eventually beat the British, it's nowhere near New York City. So after getting his butt kicked in New York City, winning a couple small battles in New Jersey, the British Army went to attack Philadelphia. Outside of Philadelphia at a place called Brandywine, at Brandywine Creek, which is right around in here somewhere in the picture. I can't really find it right now. The British, again, just horribly, totally and completely and thoroughly beat up the American Army. It wasn't even close. The American Army did not fight very well. The British were, again, trained professionals. The Americans were a bunch of volunteers who really didn't know what they were doing. George Washington, bless his soul, but he was not really a very good strategist, a strategic kind of guy. He allowed the British to get in behind him. That's the pictures that you're seeing right here. So it was a very humiliating defeat. Okay, so these are some pictures. If you would wish to incorporate them, obviously the British are kicking the Americans' butts in both of these battles. The British decided to cut the American colonies apart by capturing the Hudson River and Lake Champlain. To do this, the British would use 3 armies coming from 3 different directions. This would confuse and divide the American army defending New York State. One large army would move north along the Hudson River from New York City. The Hudson River, as we've talked about in class, is an enormous river, very wide down here at New York City. This is where the British Army had just dramatically beaten George Washington. And the Hudson River is a fairly narrow or fairly flat, wide river, as you can see from the pictures. The British could very easily and quickly, might add, use their sailing ships to sail up the river, which is much, much faster than marching along the very high hills and mountains on the sides of the river here. So this would have been a very easy, fast way to move very quickly across a couple of 100 miles of land up to the city of Albany, which is right here near Saratoga. Now again, please pay attention to the geography here. It's going to be a big important thing as we keep going. Another British army would move south along Lake Champlain and then to the Hudson River. Okay, now we're back to our map. New York is down here. There was that first army was supposed to go up the Hudson River. The second army, led by British General John Burgoyne, which is why it's red, would leave the city of Quebec, go to Montreal, which is right at the very tip top of Lake Champlain, which, by the way, this is Lake Champlain, and would then be on boats from the St. Lawrence River, boats into Lake Champlain. They would get out of the boats after they got to Fort Ticonderoga, which is a battle that they won, and then they would walk a very short amount of time, 20 miles or so, to get back into the Hudson River. Now, Saratoga is literally right there. So by doing this, okay, by meeting at Saratoga, there'd be a British army controlling the Hudson, a British army controlling Lake Champlain to the north, and that would literally cut the American colonies in half. You had New England over here and the rest of the colonies over here. The idea being, New England is where the Revolution started. That's where those hotheads lived in Boston with their massacres and tea parties and the Adams cousins, John and Sam and John Hancock and all the rest of these guys that started this whole thing. The British always felt that New England, they were the troublemakers. Let's get rid of them. Let's kick them out of class, so to speak, right? Separate them from the rest of the colonies, which are better. Okay, so that was the idea here. This is a picture of the Lake Champlain. Obviously, it's a more modern day picture. The picture here is taken by me, actually, while I was waiting for this ferry to come over. And I'm standing on the New York side of the lake. You can see the White Mountains right there. I'm sorry, the Green Mountains. There, it's the name of the mountains, Green Mountains, and that's what is now Vermont. So that's the other side of the lake. The lake is very narrow, but as you can see from the map, it's narrow from side to side, but from top to bottom, it's very, very long, which made it very, very useful for the British to bring very, very heavy supplies and big boats full of soldiers and things like that very quickly down the St. Lawrence, down Lake Champlain. So again, the British are using geography and to very quickly and easily move their armies from place to place. A third British army would sail down the St. Lawrence River into Lake Ontario, and after landing at Oswego, New York, move east along the Mohawk River, meeting the other 2 British armies around the city of Albany. Here is where that comes out. A British army from Montreal would sail down the St. Lawrence River into Lake Ontario. Right here is where the city of Oswego is right now. They had a fort there called Fort Ontario, named after the river. And then the British Army was supposed to go attack a very small American fort at Fort Stanwix, okay, then go through the city, well, town back then, small village of Oriskany, and then move down the Mohawk River and complete the attack on the Americans, the blue circle, sitting here in Albany. So there would be one British Army coming up from the south, one British Army attacking them from the north, one British Army attacking them from the west, and the American Army was supposed to be, according to the British plan, get crushed by these three. And that was the idea. Okay, now the British used their geography quite well here with all the rivers, St. Lawrence, Lake Ontario, the Mohawk River, the Hudson River, and all of that was, again, used on purpose because it's much faster and much easier to use a big, wide river like this. This is the Mohawk River, to get from place to place. And as you can see from this picture, to this day, this is the New York State Thruway right here. This is what is now the CSX Railroad main line between New York, Boston, and Chicago, right here. So this river punches a hole through the Adirondack Mountains, and it is still used to this day to get from place to place very quickly and very easily. All right, so that's what the British were doing. They're using their geography to cut off the Americans, cut the head off the American Revolution there in New England. Okay, back to the reading. Almost immediately, the British plan did not go well. The British Army in New York City marched south after General Washington's army, not north up the Hudson River. You can see that right here. Instead of going north to attack the Americans in Albany, the British general, I believe it was Gage, General Gage at this time, decided to chase after George Washington and head south away from that. So he broke that plan right there. This is a painting of the Americans as they're going through New Jersey and Pennsylvania. They're right here. So you can also tell that they're Americans because if you notice, they don't really have a uniform. There is, some guys wearing green, some guys wearing brown, some guys have hats, some guys don't have hats. They're wearing all kinds of different colors and things like that. Whereas the British, they're very uniform. They always have the red jackets, the black hats, the white pants, the big black boots. Very uniform. Okay. The British Army moving east down the Mohawk River was defeated by a much smaller American force under the command of American General Benedict Arnold. He was already a war hero. Now, sometimes people don't understand that before Benedict Arnold was the most notorious traitor ever in American history, he was a huge hero in American history. So what we're talking about here is this branch of the British Army. They did successfully go down the St. Lawrence River. They got into Lake Ontario. They got off Lake Ontario and had a short battle at Fort Ontario that they won. And then they got to Fort Stanwix, which was held by a very small number of New York militiamen who were literally just guys living in the area that went to the fort. The British surrounded the fort, and with their Native American Iroquois allies were doing a pretty good job there. And then all of a sudden they heard that General Arnold had taken another fairly small force of American soldiers and was coming to attack them. But General Arnold, as we can see from his picture right here, he fought against the British, and the Native Americans that were allied with them, and defeated them. And it was very, very brave. As it said in the reading, Benedict Arnold, by this time, he's already a war hero. Everybody in the American colonies knows about Benedict Arnold. They think that he's a better guy, a better general than General George Washington. This guy wins. Almost every battle that he's been in, he has won. He's been wounded in battle. He fought a very brave but losing battle up here at the city of Quebec. He was leading his troops just like you see right here. He's not a guy that's going to sit in the back and tell people, hey, go there, go there. He's a guy that's out in front saying, hey, follow me. He was dramatic. He was exciting. He was a winner. This guy was just amazing. And that's Benedict Arnold. Okay, so after Benedict Arnold crushes, okay, this branch of the British Army, he will take this group of guys and march back. But I mean, again, big key thing here, Benedict Arnold, not a traitor here. He was a decorated and wounded in battle war hero at this time. Okay, General Arnold then returned to the main American army outside of Saratoga, New York, where they stopped the remaining British from advancing any farther. This battle was named Freeman's Farm because this is where it was fought. 18 days after the battle at Freeman's Farm, the British again attacked the Americans at a place called Bemis Heights. American General Arnold rode out and bravely attacked the British and forced the British to surrender. Now remember, there was supposed to be 3 British armies attacking this one American army here at Saratoga, but the first British army never made it up the Hudson River. The second British army was defeated in a battle here outside of Oriskany by American war hero General Benedict Arnold, and that only leaves this third British army under British General John Burgoyne, Gentleman Johnny, okay, to go down the St. Lawrence, down Lake Champlain, and then into the Hudson River to attack this American army. And that's exactly what it did. And it won a pretty spectacular victory here at Fort Ticonderoga. But by the time it got here, the British and their German Hessian soldiers that were fighting with them were starting to run out of food. The British army moved unbelievably slowly. And the slower that it moved, the more food that it needed, and they didn't bring any food, or they didn't get any food from around here. They would bring it all the way back from Quebec, and it had to sail down the river, and then across the, after Fort Ticonderoga, they had to walk it across the land, and they got beaten up a couple of times. So by the time of the battles that we just talked about, the Battle of Freeman's Farm, and this is a picture of Freeman's Farm. I was there in 2010, 2011. So I took this picture, and this is what it looks like there now. By the way, so this is where that first battle was, Battle of Freeman's Farm. This is actually the Freeman's Farm. This is the farmhouse. I was inside there. I took this picture. There is literally 2 rooms downstairs and 1 room upstairs. That's where people would sleep. This is their house. This is bigger than most people's garages right now, but this is the farmhouse, okay? And the battle took place all around here, as you can see from the cannons pointing, okay? This is a painting of the Battle of Bemis Heights, okay? And the British first started off attacking the Americans, but as the Americans were starting to run away and starting to retreat a little bit, that's when Benedict Arnold, as you can see him very prominently sitting on his horse, would rode out into the battlefield against the orders of the supreme general in charge, this guy named Gates. Benedict Arnold gets on his horse, goes out in the middle of the battle, rallies the soldiers. He was one of those go out and be in the front kind of guys, and the Americans, as you can see here, the American soldiers were very excited about that. They would fight for him because he was out there putting his life on the line. Okay, the British up here and their Hessians, as you can see from the big tall hats on some of them, were pushed all the way back from the American lines to the British lines, where they had some what they called redoubts, and the Americans pushed through them and attacked them. And again, you can see they're attacking. They're out there. They're out in the open. All kinds of stuff can can happen. But as long as Benedict Arnold was with the soldiers, they felt as though they were safe. Okay, and they would do what he asked them to do and what he ordered them to do. All right, this monument is at the battle site, the battlefield site of Saratoga. It is near what is called Brayman's Redoubt, and this is a monument to Benedict Arnold's foot. Okay, he was, remember, a war hero, and as part of the story so far, I've been saying his name a lot. General Arnold, General Arnold, General Arnold did this great thing, General Arnold did that great thing. You don't hear about the actual commanding general of the American Army at Saratoga, which is a guy by the name of Gates, right? I don't say his name, I say Arnold did this, and Arnold did that, and Arnold was a hero. So, Arnold was a big, huge hero. He was wounded yet again in the foot at the Battle of Saratoga. He had already been wounded in that same foot at the Battle of Quebec very early in the war, and then he had one of his horses was shot and killed right out from underneath him, and when the horse fell down, the horse landed on his foot again, and then he had his foot injured a third time, that same foot, at the battle at Saratoga. So he was obviously a very, decorated and, general who led from the front and got wounded a lot. Well, as we may know already, and I'll tell you right now if you don't, Benedict Arnold eventually, a couple of years after the battle at Saratoga, becomes America's most notorious traitor. He, because of his wounded foot, he could no longer fight in battles anymore. He was just way too lame and too gimp to actually do any of the fighting. So he was given a post, of a very important post of being at West Point, which is a fort on the Hudson River just to the north of New York City. And because Benedict Arnold didn't think that the Americans were being as nice to him as they should be, because he was such an awesome guy, war hero, won the battle at Saratoga, and this, that, and the other thing, he decided to switch sides. He decided to become part of the British Army, and when he was going to switch sides, he planned on giving up his fort, this very important fort on the Hudson River, to the British. All right. Now the whole plan was discovered, and it fell through, but Benedict Arnold escapes to the British side, where the British pay him an enormous amount of money to switch sides, and also make him a general, a major general in the British Army. Right? But for the rest of history, Benedict Arnold is remembered as a traitor, as an enemy of the United States of America, not the war hero that he was originally. So once the Battle of Saratoga is over and the war is over and America wins, and the people around Saratoga are saying, hey, Saratoga was an important battle, we should commemorate it. They decided that they were going to put a monument up to General Arnold, but because he was a traitor, they didn't know what to do. So they decided to do this, and that's what you see right here. This is a monument to General Arnold's foot that he lost at this spot during the battle at Saratoga. Now they are only commemorating and memorializing, the foot, not the man. The man eventually goes on to become a traitor, but the foot that he lost and that is supposedly buried at this site was a part of the man who was still an American war hero several years before he became a traitor. So that's why this memorial is the way it is. It's not really a memorial to the entire man, General Arnold. It's a memorial to his foot. Okay, and I thought that was just cool enough that I wanted to get my picture taken there. So, and just as a quick heads up, guys, you can go to the battlefield at Saratoga. It's not very far away, and it is a very nice place. And the city of Saratoga is just gorgeous. I know I sound like a tour guide, but it really is nice. The American Army proved during the battles of Saratoga that they could defeat large and powerful British armies. So remember, there were 3 British armies attacking the Americans. One never showed up. It went south. The other 2 were both defeated by the Americans, and of course the hero of the Americans at that time, Benedict Arnold. Okay, which means that the Americans had proven that they could beat not just one British army, but two British armies almost simultaneously. As I mentioned before, this is a painting of the British surrendering after the second battle, the Battle of Bemis Heights. This is General John Burgoyne surrendering to American General Gates, okay, with a George Washington looking character here in the middle, and George Washington was never there. What you don't really see here is General Benedict Arnold, who was laying in a bed nursing that horribly bad leg wound that I said in the last slide that he had amputated, but I just read up on it, and I'm sorry, he didn't have it amputated. He had it set, but it was so poorly done, that leg was 2.5 inches shorter than his other leg. So obviously that was a major problem for him for the rest of his life. Okay, so this is the surrender. This is a big deal. This is the United States of America defeating a huge British armies, okay, not just once but twice. Okay, so this was a dramatic victory for the American side, and it's going to have really important outcomes for the United States in general. Okay, this impressed the French, who then decided to help the Americans fight their longtime enemies, the British. Remember, the British and the French have hated each other for a long time. Remember the French and Indian War? All right. Eventually, the money, training, armies, and navies provided by the French overwhelmed the British and forced them to give up control of America. As previously mentioned, this is the royal French flag. This is the flag of the Bourbon family. The oldest man in the Bourbon family was the King of France. Okay, Louis the 14th, I believe it was at this point in time. I might be a little bit wrong on that. Picture of the French troops wearing white. They're carrying a flag of the French army, the slightly different flag, but similar blue background. The gold, I just had some sort of a picture of the money, very, very important money that the French let the Americans use, and the French Navy. Okay, very, very important part of the eventual victory over the British that we, as Americans, did eventually get. Now remember, none of this, hint, 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 would have been going on. The French never would have come in to help us if it hadn't been at the battle because of the Battle of Saratoga. The Battle of Saratoga proved that the Americans aren't just a bunch of farmer hicks attacking a big giant lion in the to symbolize the British, and we could win, and that if the French help us, they're not helping a bunch of losers, and then we would eventually lose, and then the French would lose yet another war versus the British. That we were winners. America could win. We showed that we could win. We have Benedict Arnold on our side. We beat the British at Saratoga, and this allows the French to say, okay, we're going to help out. We're going to give you an army. We're going to give you a navy. We're going to give you money. We're going to give you supplies. We're going to train you guys. We're going to help you out a tremendous amount. And that's eventually what really wins the American Revolution for the United States. Okay, it was this help from the French. Okay, so muy importante. All right, in my very poor Spanish.